What's up, guys? Coach Dalton here for another episode of Lit Flicks, and this is going to be a recap of The Great Gatsby, chapters 1 through 3, with an analysis of the Valley of the Ashes. So you should be reading this after you have finished your reading for chapters 1 through 3. All right. If you're watching this early, go ahead and pause and finish your reading because it's going to ruin some of the reading for you. So I'm going to do a quick, and I mean really quick, recap of just what we've seen. All right. Lots more intricate pieces, but just to remind you what you've read. So we have our narrator, okay, this guy named Nick Carraway, who's kind of this bright-eyed, bushy-tailed young guy who has moved from Minnesota to New York. All right. And he has moved into a tiny little house on West Egg. All right. Which is this area where they say new money lives, meaning people who have just made their own money, a lot of which was made through crime during this time. On the other side of the river is East Egg, okay, which is the old money, another grand area to live in. People who have inherited their money, people like his cousin, Daisy Buchanan. So in chapter 1, Nick goes to have a meal with Daisy and her husband Tom at their mansion in East Egg. By the way, this is Jordan Baker, who you notice Tom and Daisy are trying to set Nick up with. All right, so Tom and Daisy, they have what we'll call an awkward meal altogether. Because we come to find out that Tom is cheating on Daisy with a woman named Myrtle. All right. And Myrtle is not shy, and she calls the house. All right. The phone is ringing during their meal, and it's really awkward. If you can't tell, Daisy knows who it is. Everybody knows who it is, but nobody will say it. It's almost like if they don't say it out loud, it's not real. All right. So Myrtle calls the house. Tom and Daisy get in a little bit of an argument. And this is where we see that quote that I showed you earlier, where Daisy hopes that her daughter will just grow up to be a fool. All right. And that is the quote that tells us that Daisy knows Tom is cheating. All right. But she chooses to be ignorant and be a quote unquote fool. All right. Now, Myrtle is married to a guy named George Wilson. Okay. Not this guy. All right. This guy, who is an owner of an auto body shop out in an area called the Valley of the Ashes, which is what we're going to look at pretty deeply here today. All right. And then in chapter 2 continues on where they all go and have a party. Myrtle, not her husband. And there's a lot of drinking, a lot of smoking, a lot of, canoodling, we'll say, all things that Nick is usually against, but he just decides to go along with it and not judge. And then in chapter 3, Nick is invited to one of Gatsby's lavish parties, where he fraternizes with Jordan and meets Gatsby, who is still a pretty mysterious character to us. All right, so this is a picture from the movie of how they interpret the Valley of the Ashes. All right, and here's a quote from the book we're going to look at. It says, about halfway between West Egg and New York, the motor road, meaning like the railroad, joins the railroad and runs beside it for a quarter of a mile so as to shrink away from certain desolate area of land. That piece of the quote is saying that the railroad doesn't run through the Valley of the Ashes very long because they don't want the rich to have to worry about the poor. All right, this is the Valley of the Ashes, a fantastic farm. All right, not actually a farm, right? Just a metaphor, where ashes grow like wheat into ridges and hills and grotesque gardens, where ashes take the forms of houses and chimneys and rising smoke, and finally, with a transcendent effort of men who move dimly and already crumbling through the powdery air. All right, so there's our description of the area in Nick's words. All right, what is the Valley of the Ashes? Okay, it is literally a dumping ground for all of the industrial ashes. Okay, so this is the rise of the industrial age. All of the waste and trash from New York and East Egg and West Egg and the surrounding affluent areas is dumped here. Okay, and then figuratively, it is the dumping ground for people who have been cast out from society, who are poor, who are viewed as low. Okay, like George Wilson and his wife Myrtle, though Myrtle doesn't believe she belongs there. This area in the book, Fitzgerald wrote to represent the moral and social decay. Okay, so basically the rotting away of society and what people hold value in. Okay, everyone in East Egg and West Egg, they're so busy chasing after what they want, partying, drinking. They don't pay attention to the people in the valley. They have no business with those people. Their only focus is on themselves and their own pleasures, all right? This is kind of speaking to a theme that I'm going to talk about in just a second. And we see this specifically um, in a clip I'm going to show you with Tom and Myrtle's husband. So pay attention to this and think about some of the comments I just made on classism.
Tom had invited me to town, apparently for lunch at the Yale Club, but the day took an unexpected turn. Come on. What do you mean? Trust me. What are we doing? Hey, what are we doing? John, what are you doing? Tom! Tom, hey, wait a second, would ya? Comedy, Dick, comedy! Hello, Wilson. How's business? Yeah, I can't complain. You gonna show me that car? I've still got my man working on it. He works pretty slow, don't he? Maybe I better sell it somewhere else. Oh, no. What's he saying that?
If it's business, you should be talking to me. Get some chairs, why don't you, so somebody can sit down.
Sure. Yeah, let's talk business. Sure. I'll get the chairs. Myrtle, why don't you entertain?
Hurry up.
Yeah, right. Candy? No, thank you. No? Mrs. Wilson. Okay. Nick Carroll.
Oh,
All right, so you can almost really see how smug Tom is, right? Like hugging Myrtle behind George's back and thinking that he's getting away with it, already thinking that he's better than George.
pleasure.
Nick's the writer.
Oh,
That's in Bond, actually.
I want you to get on the next train.
now? Yes. Can we get the talk for the apartment?
Whenever you want.
Mr. Buchanan! Want a soda? I'm fine.
Call your sisters back here.
No. That's all right.
So you might have learned the term cuckold from Shakespeare, which is basically the man who is being cheated on, okay, behind his back. And they really show George like a cuckold here. He's just this sweet, kind of working class man. Here he is offering this like suited Tom, a soda in his little shop, probably can't even afford the sodas in his fridge. And they just really paint him as a normal guy. And it's definitely to draw sympathy for him.
That's all right, thanks.
Catherine said to be very good looking. I give you what and
Really, I can't.
Hey, going to embarrass Myrtle.
All right, so in that clip, let's see if I can get it paused now.
Apparently for
We see some of the themes that I mentioned in episode 1, but I want you to continue following, okay? Which is the declining morality of the upper class. They are materialistic, they are vapid, they are wrapped up in their own lives. I mean, here's Tom essentially blowing up, George's marriage, and he definitely doesn't care. That goes along with the idea of classism, right? The upper class appears to be immune to a lot of the problems and consequences that the lower class suffers from in this book, and we see it more and more as the story goes on. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to ruin it, but the rich prevail in this book, all right, which is kind of the opposite of what normally happens in stories. You hope that, the nice guy is going to finish first, but unfortunately, that's not the case. And then Nick remains a neutral narrator, okay, even though he hangs out with the rich. There was a quote that he said in chapter 1 that was really important. It gives us a good look into his psyche in terms of how he views himself, okay? So he says, "In my younger years, my father gave me some advice. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, just remember that all of the people in the world haven't had the advantages that you've had." So Nick grew up wealthy, he grew up with a lot of privilege, and he, unlike Tom and Daisy, recognizes that fact, and he doesn't feel like he's better than other people. So even though he spends a lot of time, like I said, with a lot of the wealthy, he dates Jordan Baker for a little bit, He's good friends with Gatsby. He doesn't feel entitled or better than this other group. The last thing I want to show you is actually this cool article that tells us what area in New York Fitzgerald based this concept of Valley of the Ashes on. So the theory is that he actually bases it on this area in Queens that's a real place. And I'm going to have the link to this article for you. I'm just going to show you some of the pictures. But basically, there's this area called Willets Point, and it's supposedly the inspiration for the Valley of the Ashes. And it's just 62 acres, what it says. Yeah, of auto repair shops and salvage yards. So they have some cool pictures here. Like he said, some of the trains pass by, but it's not really, it doesn't stop there for very long. So we saw in the movie, it just stopped there for a second. Let's see if I can get this to go forward. We see a couple pictures, okay, of people waiting there. So this is a customer. There's one more I want to show you. Shows you just kind of like all the salvage art. This was made by, or these pictures were taken by like a photographer, so they're kind of supposed to be artsy. So there's like a whole pile of the junk. All right, and you can see how the streets are in horrible shape and things like that. And so, like I said, I'm going to link this to the lesson for today, so you can go back and look at this. But supposedly based on a real area in New York, in Queens, and really important to the themes we see in our book. So go ahead and keep paying attention to that idea of classism, and we're going to see what happens with Tom and Myrtle and George and all these people who are just getting into some, we'll call it risky business here. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, be sure to email me or set up a Zoom or come by my room. Talk to you soon.